Hello LG employees, my name is Kingsley Stewart and this is my associate Henry Worth. We've been hired to address the recent report in regard to the sale of one of your high-end TVs with reference to the consumer guarantee of acceptable quality. When you purchase goods or services in Australia, it is protection provided to consumers that ensures the product or service they purchase meets certain standards and is a legal requirement for LG. The guarantee of acceptable quality applies to goods, in this instance, LG's TVs. When you purchase goods such as TVs, the guarantee of acceptable quality applies. It ensures that the goods are of reasonable quality, free of defects, safe to use, durable, and fit for their purpose. The goods must match the description provided. If a product is advertised with specific features or characteristics, it should have those attributes when you get it. The goods or services must comply with any relevant standards that apply. This could include industry standards, safety standards, or any other regulations. A consumer's reasonable expectations are significant in the application of the consumer's guarantee of acceptable quality. Reasonable expectations take into account what a reasonable consumer would expect from the goods they purchase. It helps to determine whether the product or service meets those expectations or doesn't, which in your case, it hasn't, due to the TV being damaged without external factors within 6 months of purchasing by customers.
What the consumer guarantee of acceptable quality requires. When assessing a consumer's reasonable expectations, several factors are taken into account. These factors may be different depending on the specific circumstances, but here are some common considerations for you as LG staff you guys should look into and take into account. The product should be fit for purpose, as the goods and services must be able to be commonly used for any of its specifications, and you made known by the seller or service provider before they purchase it. If the goods fail to meet any of these requirements, the customer may be entitled to remedies such as a refund, repair, replacement, or compensation.
How a consumer's reasonable expectation affects the practical application of the consumer guarantees of acceptable quality, and what factors are taken into account when assessing a consumer's reasonable expectation. Firstly, the TV was not free from defects and therefore doesn't meet the consumer's reasonable expectation. The TV was safe to use, which does meet the consumer's reasonable expectation. The TV was not durable, as it only lasted 6 months, which does not meet the consumer's reasonable expectation. They were fit for their purpose for the first 6 months, but then when they became defected with a line down the middle with damaged pixels, the consumer's reasonable expectations weren't met.
I do not believe it is possible to exclude or restrict the operation of the acceptable quality guarantee in this scenario reported in the media. According to the Australian consumer law, consumers have the right to repair, replace, or refund depending on the issue. If the issue is a major problem, the customer has the right to choose which option they prefer. If it involves the product having an issue that would have stopped someone from buying it, such as the line down the middle of the TV. The acceptable quality guarantee is not excludable, meaning it cannot be waived or limited by a manufacturer or seller. Therefore, LG's response to the customer's complaint appears to be incorrect and inconsistent with the Australian consumer law.
In Australia, under the Australian consumer law, consumers are entitled to certain guarantees when they purchase goods, including electronics such as televisions. In the scenario reported in the media, the customer purchased an LG television valued at $1,750 that developed a fault within a year of purchase. LG initially replaced the television, but when the same fault occurred again 6 months later, LG refused to provide a remedy to the customer, stating that the television had been of acceptable quality for a reasonable period of time. However, the fact that the same fault occurred twice in less than a year raises questions about whether the television was actually of acceptable quality. While there is no set time frame for how long goods must have remained of acceptable quality, the expected lifespan of a high-end television is around 11 years. Therefore, a $1,750 television that develops a fault twice within a year could be argued to be below expected lifespan and not of acceptable quality. In conclusion, the consumer guarantee of acceptable quality would apply to the scenario reported in the media, and LG could be held liable to provide a remedy to the consumer if it is determined that the television was not of acceptable quality.